Listen to me, y'all. There comes a time when you can't just sit there and let somebody write your story for you. There comes a time when you got to grab that pen bag, slam it on the table and say, "Hold up. This is my life, my nation, my destiny. You don't get to narrate how it goes down." And that's exactly what India just did. For too long, folks in the West have been out here thinking they can throw words, threats, warnings, and India would just nod, bow its head, and take it. But no, not anymore. This ain't that old India. This is a different beast. This is a lion that's wide awake. And when a lion roars, let me tell you, everybody listens. Whether they want or not, Donald Trump thought he could play that old-school American game again. That loudmouth chest-beating, we run the show type of deal, but he wasn't ready for the clapback. He wasn't ready for the quiet fire of Josh Anchor. See, America's used to leaders who either explode in anger or crumble under pressure. But Shankar, that man got ice in his veins, calm, collected, smooth like silk. But every word he drops cuts deeper than a blade. He don't got to shout. He don't got to wave his arms around. He just sits there, looks straight through you, and says something so sharp that the whole room goes silent. That's power. Real power ain't always loud. Sometimes real power is the ability to shock the world with just a sentence. Now, here's the thing. Trump and folks like him, they're not just worried about India buying oil from Russia or India refusing to play along with some Western script. That ain't the real issue. The real issue is this. India is rewriting the entire playbook. For decades, the West wrote the rules and everybody else was forced to play along. They said, this is democracy, this is freedom, this is the right way. But who defined that right way? They did. Who benefited from that right way? They did. And now India's standing up, and why Trump underestimated India saying no thank you. We'll define our own path. We'll stand on our own terms. We don't need you to approve us. We don't need you to validate us. That right there, that shakes them to their core, because control only works when people agree to be controlled. And India just ripped up that agreement. Trump ain't used to that. He ain't used to people looking him dead in the eye and not flinching. He built his whole brand on being the man who intimidates, who talks bigger, who dominates the conversation. But when Shankar talks, you realize quickly domination don't come from volume. It comes from conviction. It comes from history. It comes from representing 1 billion-plus people who know their worth now. And when India speaks through him, the world feels it. America, Europe, the whole West, they all lean back, shake their heads, and whisper, "Damn, did he just say that?" Because here's the truth. Trump thought he was dealing with the old India, the India that had to beg for loans, the India that looked west for every blessing, every deal, every handshake. Now, man, that India's gone. This India got its own money, its own tech, its own weapons, its own pride. This India put satellites in the sky on half the budget America spends on coffee. This India fed its people through a pandemic, built vaccines that the world lined up to buy, and still managed to grow its economy while others were crashing. This ain't a follower. This is a leader in its own right. So when Trump tried to flex, he ended up exposed. And the West, oh, they were shocked. Shocked not because Shankar said something offensive. Nah, they were shocked because they finally realized India ain't asking for a seat at the table anymore. Is building its own damn table. Think about it. For decades, America played that good cop, bad cop routine with nations like India. One president praises you, the next one threatens you. One offers trade deals, the other slaps sanctions. They thought this push and pull would keep India forever dependent, forever second, guessing itself. But Shankar shut that circus down with one powerful message. India, Don't swing left, and Jaishankar's sharp words of truth right just because Washington says so. India ain't a puppet. India got its own compass and it's pointing north, no matter what storm tries to move it. Now let me tell you why this is shaking the West so hard. Because if India can do this, then every other country that's been bullied, lectured, or controlled by the West might look up and say, wait a minute, we can do this too. You see where I'm going with this? India ain't just standing up for itself. India set an example, and examples are dangerous for people who want to keep control. If India shows you can walk away from Western pressure and still thrive, then what happens? Suddenly Africa ain't listening. Suddenly Latin America ain't listening. Suddenly the Middle East saying we'll take our own money and do our own thing. That's the domino effect, and that's the nightmare for the West. So Trump might have thought he was just having another tough guy moment. But what really happened was historic, because Jaishankar looked him square in the eye and basically said, you don't scare us, respect us, or step aside. And let me tell you, the room shifted. You can feel when energy changes. You can feel when history bends. That was one of those moments, because when the West realized India ain't budging, something deep hit them. They realized the world order they built, the hierarchy they protected. It ain't ironclad anymore, it's cracking. It's shifting, and the cracks are coming from places they never expected. Let me make this real plain. The West fear ain't about losing trade with India. It ain't about losing some military partnership. It's about losing control of the narrative. See, they've always had the privilege of saying we are the example. We are the model. Follow us if you want success. But now India is showing there's another way. A way where you don't bow down, where you don't compromise your dignity, where you don't sell your soul for a seat at someone else's table. India saying we'll build our own table, and guess what? Y'all might end up asking for a seat at it. That's the flip. That's the shock. That's the message. And Jaishankar, he didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't beg. He didn't, the West left speechless, apologize. He just spoke truth. Truth about how India ain't going to choose sides in someone else's fight. Truth about how India don't take lectures from people who themselves got messy histories. Truth about how respect is a two-way street. And when you hear that truth, when you hear it delivered with that calm certainty, you understand why Trump's bluster don't work anymore. Because bluster can shake the weak, but when you're standing on a foundation built from centuries of resilience, bluster sounds like noise. And India ain't got time for noise. This ain't just politics, folks. This is identity. This is dignity. This is a nation finally standing in its full height and saying, we ain't small no more. We ain't bending no more. We ain't scared no more. And when a nation does that, the whole world has to adjust. Trump thought he was playing chess, but India flipped the whole board and said, we ain't pieces, we players now. And that's what's shocking the West to its core. And you know why this is so powerful. Because it ain't temporary. This ain't some election year flex. This ain't some leader trying to make a headline. This is generational. This is cultural. This is deep in the veins of India. Now, you can't put that genie back in the bottle. You can't silence a billion voices that have found their power, and Trump, the West, everybody, they know it. That's why they're rattled. That's why they're scrambling, because they're not just facing the India of today. They're facing the India of tomorrow, and tomorrow's India don't need permission. It don't need validation. It don't need applause. Tomorrow's India commands respect by default, and once you command respect, you can't be stopped. So when Jaishankar dropped that powerful message, it wasn't just a clap back at Trump. It was a line drawn in history. It was India saying, "You can be shocked, you can be angry, you can be jealous, but you will respect this doubt." And whether they like it or not, the West is going to have to deal with that reality, because the game done changed. And India ain't playing by the old rules anymore. Let me tell you something. People get so caught up in India's power shift, explain the noise of today, that they don't see what's really happening tomorrow. Everybody wants to talk about the argument that went down, the sharp words, the tough tone, the clash in the moment. But that ain't where the real story is. The real power shift ain't in today's headlines. It's in the future India is shaping, and in that future respect won't be politely asked for. It won't be negotiated in back rooms. It won't be begged from the so-called great powers. No, respect will be demanded, and it will be given because India won't leave room for anything else. See, you got to understand how power works. Power ain't just about how loud you are in the room. Power ain't just about who's got the biggest economy or the strongest military today. That's surface-level thinking. Real power is when people adjust their behavior because of you, even when you're not in the room. Real power is when your name alone makes people hesitate before they make a move. Real power is when respect becomes automatic, not optional. And that's exactly what India is building right now. Not a momentary clapback, not a one-time response to Trump or the West, but a whole new standard where India's respect is non-negotiable. Trump thought he was making waves with his words. He thought his style of calling out nations, embarrassing leaders, flexing America's muscles was going to have the same effect it used to. But the West is realizing something dangerous for them. India ain't here to play those old games anymore. When JAISHANKAR speaks, he don't come across like a man begging for approval. He comes across like a man speaking on behalf of 1 billion people who know they got weight now. And that's what shakes them. It ain't just what he said. It's the confidence behind it, the inevitability behind it. Because confidence backed by momentum can't be stopped. And India's momentum, it's unstoppable. You see, India ain't just winning in politics. India's winning in economics. India's winning in technology. India is winning in global influence. You got companies from every corner of the world lining up to invest in India. You got Silicon Valley giants realizing they can't build their future diplomacy with strength without India's brains and India's markets. You got defense industries looking east because India is not just a buyer anymore. It's a builder, a creator, an innovator. And that shift makes respect automatic because respect always follows contribution. When you contribute at the highest level, people can't ignore you even if they want to. But here's the twist. The West is shocked because they're used to being the ones who set the pace. They're used to being the standard everyone else had to chase. And now they're seeing India shape its own standard, build its own future, write its own rules, and guess what? Other countries are watching. Other nations are saying, wait a minute, if India can do this, why can't we? That ripple effect is what makes the West nervous because respect ain't just moving toward India. It's shifting the entire balance of power. Once respect stops being a gift given by the West and becomes something nations earned for themselves, the whole game changes. Think about this. For decades, America and Europe controlled the narrative by controlling access. If you wanted trade, you looked to them. If you wanted loans, you looked to them. If you wanted technology, you looked to them. And with that leverage, they could dictate respect on their terms. But India flipped that script. India said, we'll build our own. We'll partner on our terms. We'll find allies where you didn't expect. We don't need to beg for a seat at your table when we got our own kitchen cooking. And when you do that, respect don't become a question, it becomes a fact. That's why this moment between Trump and JAISHANKAR was so much bigger than just words exchanged because it revealed the shift in who controls respect. Now Trump's words represented the old world, the one where America talks and everyone listens. JAISHANKAR'S response represented the new world, the one where India listens and India's rise, no one can stop, then decides for itself. And in that decision, there's power. Because power is always about choice. When you don't have to play someone else's game, when you can walk your own path, that's real independence. And independence backed by success, that's what demands respect. Now let's break this down even further. Respect, real respect, comes from consistency. Anybody can have a good year. Anybody can clap back once. But if you keep showing up year after year, decade after decade, building, growing, proving yourself, respect becomes permanent. And India is playing that long game. Look at the economy, consistently growing even through global crisis. Look at space reaching the moon on a budget that made the world blink. Look at defense building weapons that other nations are lining up to buy. Look at culture spreading films, music, ideas that touch every corner of the world. This ain't luck. This is consistency, and consistency locks in respect so deep. Nobody can take it away. The West is used to respect being a performance. They put on the show, they hold the power, they set the stage, and everybody else claps along. But India is proven that respect ain't a performance. It's a foundation. It's rooted in resilience, in history, in contribution, in self-reliance. And when you got that kind of foundation, you don't ask anybody for respect. You stand tall, you look them in the eye, and you make respect the only option on the table. Now, Trump, for all his noise, didn't understand this. He thought he could shake India the way he shakes other nations with words, with threats, with deals wrapped in pressure. But he miscalculated, because what he was facing wasn't just a leader. It was a nation that had already decided its future. India already wrote the story, and no loud voice from across the ocean was going to erase it. That's why JAISHANKAR didn't flinch. That's why his words hit harder than Trump's volume, because when you know where you're going, you don't get rattled by somebody else trying to pull you off track. In the West, they looked at that moment and realized we're not dealing with the same India anymore. Key lesson: respect is earned. They saw the future playing out in front of them, a future where India don't sit in the back row, a future where India ain't a junior partner, a future where India don't need permission slips to make decisions. And in that future, respect ain't something the West controls. It ain't something they hand out like a gift. It's something India demands just by showing up, just by existing in its full strength. Let me tell you something powerful. When you stop asking for respect and start demanding it, the world treats you different. People might not like it. They might not admit it, but they adjust, they shift, they start planning with you in mind instead of around you. That's what India is doing to the global order right now. Every Western capital has to factor India into its calculations. They can't ignore it, they can't dismiss it, they can't sideline it. That's the new reality, and reality always wins over preference. They might prefer the old India, the one that stayed quiet, but the reality is the new India ain't going back, and respect once demanded can't be undone. So, when we say the real power shift ain't today's argument, we're talking about this unstoppable march toward a future where India's respect is the baseline. A future where the West shock turns into acceptance. A future where Trump's kind of bluster is just background noise against India's steady rise, because power built on respect outlasts power built on intimidation. And that's the kind of power India is locking in right